That's where we record all of our previous webinars. So if you ever missed one and you're really dying for that weekly wisdom webinar fix, you can go to YouTube. All right, let's go. All right, so we do these webinars. My name's Chris Berry with Castle Wealth Group. We do these webinars every week, and really they're driven by questions our clients and family and friends have. There's no agenda. It's just answering questions either live or they were submitted ahead of time. I always like to start with a positive focus, something positive that happened the previous week. And my positive focus is I got a new webcam. So it's kind of fun, like it follows you around if I was moving around. So hopefully you enjoy the picture and you can see the cut on my lip from working out. Took a dumbbell to the face. So I think the moral of the story is you shouldn't work out. That's what I learned. But with that, we will go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen. And again, if you do have a question or if something's unclear, please put it into the Q&A. And then also tonight, we're having Tom Hegna, who's been on PBS. He's presenting to our clients and friends and family on some ideas in retirement. So that's going to be at 7 p.m. tonight. It was part of the email that went out. If you didn't see that, just reply back to the email and we'll get you a login so you can check it out. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. I will share my screen. That button and that button and that button. And again, if you want to see how this applies to your specific situation, feel free to schedule some time on the calendar, or just reply to the email and let us know and we'll reach out to you. So the first question, I have 200,000 sitting in savings, but I don't know what I want to do with it. I was going to use it to help my child with a home, but they won't need it. I'm concerned about the markets right now and want at least half of that liquid. What should I do? What tools are available? So I'm always hesitant to talk about like specific tools, just because I like to focus first on goals and then strategies and then tools. And I think there's too many people out there that just try to sell a specific tool. But in this situation, so what do we have? We have 200,000 sitting in savings. So I like to call this kind of lazy money. And the problem with it is if you leave this money sitting here too long, you're facing what we call inflation risk. And because it's not growing for you. And we know that Social Security is going up about 6%, and there's big concerns about inflation right now. So very intelligently, the question is, hey, I have this money sitting in savings. I don't want to put it in the market. What are my options? And half of it, I want it liquid. So one thing we could do and understand that there's kind of this typical options with any investment. So we can have our money grow. We can have our money safe, and then we can have it liquid. And typically, you can't really get all three of these things. Money that's geared towards growth and liquidity. This is money that's geared towards the market. And kind of goes up and down. Kind of this start of this year, we've been down. I think the S&P right now is down about 4.5%. Okay, but over time it goes up. Then we have kind of the other side, which is geared towards growth and safety. Kind of grows like that. This is where you see things like fixed index annuities, IUL. Over time, you typically get about average of maybe 5 to 7%. On this side, on average, last 20 years, you got 6% on average. Last couple of years, last 12 years, it's done really good. So in this situation, what we might want to do is put, okay, $100,000 into something that's geared towards safety and growth. And if we're to look back over time, that's probably going to get you on average 6% rate of return. Anywhere from 0 to really 19% is what we've seen over the last 10 years, repeating itself. So it's protected from the downside. Okay. If the market goes down, you don't lose anything. If the market goes up, you collect the upside. The trade-off is that this is something that we wouldn't want to pull all the money out within the first 3 years. Otherwise, there'd be fees associated with it. And those fees would eat up the value. So, but after year 3, you're going to be positive. So this is, if we're looking at a time horizon, this would be something that's at least 3 years out. So that's one option. So that'd be a fixed index annuity that's geared towards growth. Now, there is a tool. So if we're looking at something that's safe and liquid, you have some different options. You have money that's at the bank, but that's not really earning you anything. You have like money markets, checking accounts. So it's safe, it's liquid, you can pull the money out, but you're not earning anything. It's not even keeping up with inflation. But there are kind of two tools that really hit all three of these where, okay, you get the growth, you get liquidity, and you get safety. So I'd say there's two tools right now that do both of these things. And one of those would be T-bills right now, or I-bills, or I-bonds, I'm sorry, hello, blanking. Okay, so I-bonds, you're gonna get about 7% rate of return right now. The problem with that is you can only put $10,000 into that. So that's safe, liquid. You have to leave it in there for, I want to say it was 5 months at the very least, or 6 months, but it's liquid. And there's some fees if you pull it out early, but basically, as long as you leave it in there for, I want to say 6 months, you'll get that 7% rate of return. And those rates are locked in at least till April. So you have till April to get your I-bonds, but you're limited to just putting $10,000 into that. So that's not really going to move the needle for a lot of people. So second option is a relatively unique tool. It's called Legacy. It's through a company called Legacy Excel. And it's a special type of IUL. So there is a little bit of life insurance underwriting. I think there's about 20 questions you answer and you get immediate approval. So it's not like you have to go through underwriting or anything like that. The advantage, you can put in as much as you want, but this might be a good option where you could put in $100,000. It's completely liquid, meaning if you want to take all the money out next year, you get that plus the growth. And on average, you're getting about a 6% rate of return on this. And if the market goes down, you don't lose anything. If the market goes up, you collect the upside. So if we have kind of that lazy money and we're not quite sure what we want to do with it, we want to keep it liquid, then if it's like 10,000 or less, you could look at I-bonds. If it's more than 10,000, then maybe you'd want to look at this Legacy Excel, which is a cash value life insurance that is very easy underwriting, takes maybe 20 minutes, you get immediate approval, pretty straightforward. You're looking at rate of return of anywhere from maybe 0 to 10% on average, and on average, I would say about 6% rate of return. And it's completely liquid, where if you want to cash the whole thing out, you certainly can at any time. So if we have 200,000 sitting there and we want a portion liquid, then I would say we put at least some of it over here. And in this question, they didn't want, and I'm not saying you shouldn't right now, but I'm just saying in this question, they didn't want anything in the market. So we're looking at, okay, what's over here, what's over here, what's over here. Okay. So again, we always start with what's the goal, figure out the strategy, and then pick the right tool. So in this question, I was just kind of focusing on some of the tools that are available right now based on what the goals were. So, all right, that's the first one. And again, if you have questions or thoughts, feel free to put it in the Q&A or the chat, and I'll try to address them as we go, or if it's a question not on topic, I'll get to that at the end. All right, number 2, person dies today, what is required for a tax filing obligation? What obligations do the executor have? Sorry, I put this together pretty quick. Sometimes I spell things wrong. So someone passes away, what's required? So we look to calendar years. So we're now in January 2022 until December. So if someone were to pass away anytime during this time period, first thing that's going to be required is their last personal tax return. Okay. And it's just looking up, like some, here's a comment. Look, see, Excel seems interesting. How can we see a draft policy contract for terms and conditions before buying it? Yeah, of course, you're not going to buy something before you take a look at it. Just email me and I'll email back. It's pretty quick to take a look at it, and then we can hop on a Zoom and see if it makes sense for you. But again, I don't like to focus on the tool. I first want to make sure that we're hitting the right goals. So if you want some more information on that, shoot me an email. Back to this. So if someone passes away, what happens from a tax perspective? So they have to do the last tax return. And then ideally, the second thing is that the estate or the trust gets wrapped up within a year. And the reason for that is, especially with trust, then you get into what's called more complex trusts versus simple trusts, where if we can get everything wrapped up within a year, then chances are you're not going to have any type of tax return or like trust tax return or anything like that. So that's why we want to be a little bit quick with distributing the assets so that the trust doesn't have to pay any income tax. And for all of our, almost all of our trusts that we set up, they're always taxed at personal income tax rates versus trust tax rates. But yeah, let's say it does drag on for over a year before the assets are either distributed to the separate share trusts and it's just kind of held in that administrative trust, then we'd have to fill out a trust tax return, which we really don't want to do. And I can't think of a situation that we've had to do that in a while. So where I was trying to avoid that. So we're trying to have everything wrapped up and put into either individual names or the separate share trusts within a year so that we don't have any additional tax consequences. But the big thing is, don't forget you have to file taxes for the person for the year they passed away. Okay. Or would we need to do, or would we need to do 2021 taxes first? That we're going to do. Oh yeah, okay, yep, sorry. So this was, so what they're asking now is, do we still have to do January or 2021? Yeah, if they passed away in January of 2022, you still have to do 2021 tax returns by April 15th, typically, unless you ask for an extension. And so because they were alive that whole year, so yeah, you have to do a tax return for that previous year. That has to be done. And then you have to do one more tax return for whatever portion of 2022 that they were alive. Okay. So yeah, you have to do 2021 taxes, of course. And then also you'll have to do the taxes for 2022 for whatever portion of the year that they're alive. All right. Number 3, I turned 72 last year, have an IRA at the bank. I didn't take any RMDs. Do I owe a penalty? What can I do? So a little more on this question that was submitted. I should have put it in here. She thought she was operating under the old rules of 70.5. So prior to the Secure Act, actually, no, let me clarify. She thought it was actually, so here, let me take a step back. So prior to the Secure Act, so prior to 2020, you had to start taking out required minimum distributions at age 70.5, which is weird. Like, who knows their half age? No one does, except for maybe my daughter, who wants like presents at her half birthday. But So the year you turn 70 and a half, then you would have to start taking out your required minimum distributions. You have to start pulling money out of these IRAs, whether you like it or not, right? And then we had the Secure Act that did two things. One is it changed your RMD age now to 72. And this is where she got a little screwed up. She thought it was 72 and a half. I should include that in the question. But no, it's 72. It's not 72 and a half, which gets rid of that half birthday thing, which is kind of weird. So in the year you turn 72, you need to take out your first RMD, and it's based on a percentage. Roughly, it's about 3.6% out of your IRA. But she didn't do that, and she had her IRA parked just at the bank, and she didn't have any advisor, anyone watching over. So this is one of the value adds that we provide is we're running your RMDs. We know what you're supposed to take out for whatever you're managing, and we wouldn't let you forget. Now, normally there would be a penalty, and that penalty, so there's two penalties as it relates to your IRAs if you mishandle them. And there's certain exceptions for this, but if you pull out money prior to 59 and a half, and again, there's a couple exceptions, just like everything. If you pull it out prior to 59 and a half, then you're going to owe a 10% penalty. And then 59 and a half to 72, you can pull out as much as you want at any time without penalty. You just have to pay the tax. But if you forget to pull money out of your IRA, you owe a 50% penalty on top of the tax. So that's bad. We don't like paying taxes and we don't like paying penalties. But luckily, when you turn 72, that first year, you have until April 15th to pull the RMD of the following year. So 2021 turned 72, did not take out a RMD. Now, as long as we do it by April, we take out the RMD. And then just keep in mind, you still have your 2022 RMD that you have to take out. So in this situation, she's going to take out two RMDs, one for her 2021 that she didn't, but she has till April because it's the first year of doing the RMDs. And then she has her 2022 RMD that she still has to take out, which cannot be after 2022. So that April 15th rule only applies to the first RMD that's taken when you turn 72. After that, it has to be taken out each year. And it can be taken out in the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, over time. It's really up to you. So, all right. That is that on RMDs. We'll keep on moving. Is it wise to put real estate into LLCs for liability protection? So we're talking about real estate, limited liabilities. That's what it does. It limits your liabilities. Limited liability company, are there downside as separate LLCs recommended for each property? Any gotchas? How much does it cost? Yeah, so we need to clarify between your primary residence and then rentals or second pieces of property. Okay, your primary residence should never go inside a LLC, because you're going to lose your homestead exemption. It screws it up from tax purposes. That's a no-no. Primary residence never goes into a LLC. What we do a lot of times is we'll put your primary residence into an asset protection trust. Like I have a client, they own a orchard. They sell like apple cider and donuts and stuff. They have a lot of people on their property, but their primary residence is the orchard. So they can't put it into an LLC if there's a slip and fall. So instead we have it in an asset protection trust. That's where trusts have a little bit more flexibility. But second pieces of property or third pieces of property or rentals, typically we recommend to limit their liability. They go inside of an LLC. And an LLC limits the liability. And it has to be filed with the state. You have to have articles of organization. You have to have a tax ID number. and then you have to deed it to the property. And then each year, and I want to say it's February, now you owe, I want to say $25 to the state. I can't remember off the top of my head. Every year. And then I want to say at the state level, it's either 50 or 150 to set up. Okay. Any downsides? Just downsides, complexity. So it's more complex, more costly to set up. And then a lot of times what we'll do actually is, is that we will do those LLCs. So that's protecting, because these are what we call hot assets. So if something happens like a slip and fall, it's limited to whatever's inside of that LLC. That's why typically we'd recommend like a series of LLCs, a LLC for each additional property. And then we would put all of this into an asset protection trust. So now, like if you were to get sued because you got in a car accident, or if you were to need long-term care, they cannot come after your LLCs, which own your pieces of real estate. For us to set up a LLC, a real estate LLC, fund the deed to it, assign it to the trust, do the tax ID, register it with the state, we charge $17.75 for a real estate LLC. And that covers everything: getting the deed set up, getting the property transfer affidavit taken care of, getting the tax ID taken care of, registering it at the state, registering the deed at the county, registering the property transfer affidavit at the city, and then also assigning it to the trust. So that's all included in that fixed fee. So yeah, you have to decide, is it worth it for that liability protection? And I think I've told this story before. A woman came to me, referred by a good client of mine, and she had her home. She had a rental property that her son was living in, and let's say she had $200,000 of assets. That was her retirement. I think she was like 62. But unfortunately, she came to me after an event happened where she invited her son, didn't have an LLC, didn't have an asset protection trust. Her son, who was living there rent free, he was like maybe 40 something, invited a friend who was a girl over. And unfortunately that woman got bit by got her face bit by the dog, and actually sued him, who had no money. And because this real estate was in mom's name directly, came after mom and got a $750,000 judgment against her, just because she was the owner of the property. And since son was was basically broke, now she has a $750,000 judgment against mom. And there's nothing we can do at this point because the claim is already made. It would be a fraudulent transfer. But if this were inside a LLC, this would have been protected. All they could have come after was that property. So that's why we look at doing the LLCs, because these things do happen, unfortunately. All right, that's number 4. I think we have 2 more. So if you do have questions or something was unclear, feel free to let me know. Yeah, we have 2 more. All right. So explain how the legacy and castle trust plan works. Is it irrevocable trust for the next generation? Do they lose the protection if they move the money out of the trust? So really we have, I would say, 3 types of trusts that we're typically doing. And first reason why we do trusts a lot of times is you have this stuff, and first you want to make sure, God forbid you pass away, the stuff avoids probate. And so that's where we look at first revocable living trusts. And what we do is we move these assets into the revocable trust. We call this funding the trust. So changing title to the assets. So now, God forbid you pass away, everything avoids probate and goes where it's supposed to go. Here's a question. Do I still need home insurance if each rental has an LLC? I'd still have that rental insurance just because that's building sandbags. I always like to have like attorneys fighting against anything coming after or attacking the castle, so to speak. So I'd still have rental insurance. And she did in that situation too, and it didn't cover everything. Okay, so the first goal for a lot of our clients is, you know what, with my trust planning, I want to avoid probate. Okay, how do we do that? We set up a revocable living trust and move the assets into the trust, thereby avoiding probate. Now, a lot of my clients want to do more than that, and they want to make sure that upon death, they're leaving things to the people they want in the manner they want. So one option is just a pillowcase of money approach, just launching a pillowcase of money at their beneficiaries. And we call this a base plan. So it's a base revocable trust, outright distributions upon death, okay? Or the other option is we can say, you know what, upon death, I want to make sure that whatever we leave to the next generation is protected from divorces, creditors, bankruptcies, etc. And so each child could be the separate share trustee of their own separate share. And whatever they decide to keep in the trust, which, yeah, it is an irrevocable trust, but they can take the money out at any time. But whatever they decide to leave in the trust would be taxed at their own income tax rates. But by doing this, now what they're doing is they're giving their children the opportunity. So whatever they inherit, if anything, would be protected from divorces, protected from creditors, and the money would stay in the bloodline, so stay in the family. Very different than the outright distributions. And so we call that our legacy trust. And so what the legacy trust does is it avoids probate and then protects the loved ones. And to answer the question, yeah, if they do take the money out, then it's outside the trust and it's not protected anymore. Okay, if they move the money out of the trust, it's not protected anymore. If they leave it in, it can grow, it can be invested however they want, but it's asset protected. And then third thing is my clients are concerned with is protecting themselves, so protecting you. Because there's two potential catastrophes that could be protected against, and a revocable trust doesn't protect you. One would be lawsuits, and then the other is the long-term care costs, specifically nursing home care, which can cost $8,000 to really $14,000 per month now. And so instead of the revocable trust, this is where maybe we want to look at that castle trust. Okay, and the castle trust avoids probate, protects your kids, and then also protects you. So that's basically how they work. With both of these trusts, you can make changes to them. So you can serve as trustee, you can decide how the assets are invested, etc. So hopefully that helped explain kind of how the revocable trust, the legacy trust, castle trust works. You're still in control while you're alive and well. You can make changes to it. When you pass away, yeah, it locks down. We can have the separate share trust for the kids. Whatever they take out of that trust at that point would be up for grabs. So that's that. Another question on the previous slide here. So just reiterating, so the two questions, do I still need home insurance if each rental has an LLC? I would recommend yes, you still have that renter's insurance. And then this follow-up question, if the lady had an umbrella policy, would that $750 be paid for, or would they have sued for more money? Yeah. So in this situation, she did have renter's insurance. And they were going over and above that renter's insurance. So think of any type of insurance as like sandbags. Okay. So they knocked down all the sandbags and they were coming over and above that. So yeah, if you have renters, have like homeowners or renters insurance, the thing that she didn't have was an umbrella policy. So I always recommend umbrella policies. But again, you're building sandbags. So yeah, I recommend you have an umbrella policy up to your net worth. But that said, they could go over and above that. And that's where insurance is always like sandbags that you're building, like property and casualty, versus like an LLC, you're building a wall. Okay. And so get to the first point. I still want to have that insurance because I don't want them to try to pierce the wall. Because yeah, you can break down walls depending on like bad fact patterns. So I'd rather have this in place to try to just protect against even getting to that point. But yeah, I'd recommend having umbrella policies. Do umbrella policies I can't talk. Do umbrella policies protect for property out of state? Yes, umbrella policies, they don't protect specific property. They like protect you. So anything that goes over and above like your auto policy or your renter's policy or your homeowner's policy, that's where umbrella policies come into play. So I always recommend people have umbrella policies up to at least their net worth. It's maybe like $200 for $1 million worth of insurance. But again, it's not perfect. It's not a magic wand. So that's why I still like to have the legal, I still like to have the legal structures in place so that if they do go over and above, or for whatever reason that insurance doesn't cover things because they find some technicality, then I have the legal structure that we created to protect against it. Okay, moving along. And this is the last one I have. So if you do have questions, either on what we covered or something we didn't cover, it's just floating around your head, feel free to put it in. My wife has Alzheimer's and her memory seems to be declining at a steady rate. We may not have 5 years before she needs some level of care from others. How best can we protect our assets and savings? So this gets back to that elder care journey that we see of, okay, we start off living at home independently, and then as we age, or if we suffer from dementia, Alzheimer's, we need more and more help. And we start out living at home, but then we might need assistance, whether that's a spouse or whether that's caregivers. Then we might move into independent living, assisted living with memory care, and then maybe nursing home care. Nursing homes these days are about $8,000 to $14,000 plus per month. Assisted living could be anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 per month. Independent living might be $1,000 to $3,000 a month. Living at home with assistance could be anywhere from $2,000 to, I have someone paying $24,000 per month right now for 24-hour around the clock care. So how can we pay for this? Well, Medicaid can pay for nursing home care, okay? And how do we protect against Medicaid and nursing home care coming in? That's where we set up an asset protection trust. So we move our funds into the asset protection trust. And then if we can make it 5 years from the time we need a nursing home, from the time we set up the trust before we need a nursing home, then everything inside of that trust is protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. So if we're right here currently, you might be saying, well, I don't have 5 years before we get into assisted living, but you may have 5 years before we get into a nursing home. And if that's the case, then everything that we've put in here to the trust is 100% protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. So everything that we have inside of the trust is 100% protected from that $8,000 to $14,000 a month bill coming at you. So that'd be the first thing I would say is let's set up a legal structure to protect your wealth where we can now have Medicaid pay that base level care if she needs care, plus a pot of resources to pay for additional services. Plus, if you're the healthier spouse, you're not completely impoverished because you're having to pay for her care. So that's one option. That does have a 5-year clock tied to it, but keep in mind, it's not 5 years before you need care. It's 5 years before you have to pay the $8,000 to $14,000 a month care. And maybe we get to like year 4, then you would just private pay to get to year 5. Okay. Now, another option, and this is more of a financial option, is we could take some chunk of money. So let's say you have $1 million, and I'm just making this up right now. We could carve out some portion of that. Let's say 300 million. Yeah, we turn 1 million to 300 million. That'd be nice. Let's carve out 300,000. And now what that could do is pay income of 30,000 a year for the rest of your life. But once we've made it 2 years, then we can trigger the long-term care benefits on this. And it's a long-term care doubler where now that income that was 30,000 per year would be 60,000 per year. Okay. Even if the 300,000 already ran out. So even if the cash value is 0 because we've paid 30,000 a year, you could still trigger this long-term care doubler, which could bring in which could double the amount of income coming out. The only thing is you have to wait 2 years before you trigger it. And the nice thing about this is there's no underwriting or anything. So even if you have an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, it's just a way to leverage those assets to create additional income to pay for home care and assisted living. So I would look at a combination of, to protect the assets, one of these 2 ways or a combination of both. This is really protecting against nursing home care. This is more for home care and assisted living. And again, this question stresses that it's the earlier you start thinking about these things, the more options you're going to have on the table. So we're a bit limited in our choices because we already have a diagnosis and we're already marching towards needing long-term care. Okay, so any other questions? Here's one. I'm getting back to the umbrella policy. So the question is, what exactly does an umbrella insurance policy cover? An umbrella insurance policy basically, it doesn't cover like specific property. Think of it like an umbrella where, okay, you have your homeowners, you have your autos, you have your maybe property and casualty. But if any of those claims go over and above that, that's where that umbrella policy comes in. So it's like a catch-all where think of it like an umbrella and like it's kind of raining. You have this additional policy. You can put up the umbrella and now you're protected if something additional were to come in and kind of attack your situation. So it's not like it's covering like boats or anything like that. It is a specific coverage, almost like a Medigap policy. Like you have your Medicare insurance and then you might have a Medigap to cover the gap. So the umbrella covers anything over and above your renters, your homeowners, your property and casualty, your auto. And you get it through your property and casualty person. And again, to get like $1 million of coverage, typically it's like $200 a year. So I think it's pretty darn cost effective. Another question, what was choice 2 called with the 300,000 long-term care and income doubler? So it's based on a insurance chassis. It is a fixed index annuity that has a long-term care doubler tied to it. There's a variety of different products out there or tools. Like I said, the nice thing about it is there's no underwriting. So if you have someone that already has an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, as long you can't turn on the doubler for a period of typically 2 years. So it's a way that like if you have IRA money, if it could be done inside of IRAs, or you're looking for additional coverage for things like home care and assisted living, where, yeah, if we can bring in, let's say normally you get 30,000 a year of income, but now we're bringing another $30,000 a year of income in. Now we're at 60,000. Maybe that covers home care and you don't have to dip into your other savings. And also the nice thing about it is if you don't use it, it's still maybe a good investment at the end of the day, depending on what your goals are, because if the market goes down, you don't lose anything. If the market goes up, you're going to collect some of the upside. Now, typically you're not going to see as much growth on a fixed index annuity that's structured that way as one that's structured for growth. So that'd be kind of the downside, is that maybe this grows at 3 to 4% per year versus a fixed index annuity that grows at 5 to 8% per year. But if long-term care is a concern, it's a way that we can leverage our assets for long-term care without doing any type of underwriting. Now, if we're healthier, there's other options that we could do. Even that legacy Excel tool I talked about earlier, let's say you put in 200,000. There's a death benefit tied to it of 400,000 that also doubles as a long-term care benefit as well. So if you're healthier, there's different options. But in a situation where we already have a dementia diagnosis or a Parkinson's diagnosis or just the frailties of aging, and we're not going to qualify for any, even of the easier underwriting long-term care options, then it's a way that we can build in some protection against long-term care. All right, any other questions or thoughts or comments? Like my new camera. All right. All right, we will let everyone go. I want to say thank you. Again, if you want to listen to Tom Hegna, he's a really exciting, kind of energetic presenter, talking about just some different retirement strategies. He has a book, 2 books actually. I've read them both. He's been on PBS talking about it. Paychecks, Playchecks and Paychecks and Retire Happy. He's going to be presenting tonight at 7 o'clock. If you haven't registered or you need to register for that, just shoot us an email or reply, and we'll send you the registration link. But otherwise, let me just double check, make sure I got everything. Yep. All right. Well, take care. Thank you.